Welcome to the corner of Morris and Queen. My name is Chris Green, owner of Atlantic News, and we're here for episode 2 of the HRM Roundtable. I want to welcome back Suzanne Rent and Colin Chisholm. Suzanne is with the Halifax Examiner. Colin is with AllNovaScotia. Welcome, you two. Welcome back.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks for having us back. I guess, you like us enough.
That's
so
right.
Here we are. Yep.
Well, we'll see. This is number 2, and we're getting good feedback. People are listening to it in the city. There were a couple of comments on YouTube. One of them just said, I can't find anything that talks about local politics, so that was nice. The other one commented on our brief discussion of transportation, and the comment was, you talked about how transportation gets people places, but you didn't talk about the environmental and the health aspects. And that's absolutely true, and at some point I think we're going to have a more in-depth conversation on that because we just didn't have time.
Sure. Fair enough.
Right,
Sounds
right.
good.
Yep.
So today we're going to talk about a couple of pieces that the two of you have written about. One of them, the Memorial Library. Another one, Colin, that dropped for you today, talking about on the provincial level and pro football and Halifax water, and that involves transportation and all sorts of things. But those will weave into the Mayor Fillmore's state of the HRM speech. It was given, 2 days ago, right?
Yep. The Halifax Convention Center. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the mayor's second time doing this. And I, courtesy of the two of you, I took a look at his last year's speech and looked at his this year's speech. A lot of similarities coming from the same gentleman. He gives a good speech. What I took from this one, just to set up the two of you, Mayor Fillmore mentions that there are really 4 pillars that he wants to focus on: housing, mobility, affordability, and then infrastructure. Yeah?
Yep.
Ish? Okay.
Congestion issues.
Yeah. Both of you have commented on this. Both of you have recently had a discussion with Mr. Fillmore. So you're very well suited to talk about this. So Suzanne, why don't you start? What were your takeaways from the state of HRM?
Well, after our last podcast, during which I mentioned that I had never interviewed Fillmore face-to-face or even on the phone, I got an email from his senior communications advisor, Ryan Nearing, asking me if I wanted to do an interview with the mayor prior to the State of the Municipality address. So we had that interview on Tuesday morning on the phone. I was given 20 minutes, and we talked about what he was planning on speaking about in that address on Wednesday. And then we talked about some other issues as well, including I asked him about the state of his mayoralty and what he would say about that if he were to give a speech. He said this is the time for the city to have a mayor who is a planner. And of course, Fillmore does have a career working as a planner in Halifax as well as in Boston.
Right. And so you had that interview, which the transcript was included in your article in the Examiner. That interview was before the speech.
Yes.
Right. So what's your take on what he said?
I didn't find anything new that I didn't really already know, other than that Sail GP is coming back, was confirmed for 2027. That
Good
event,
news.
The big wealthy yacht owners will be here in a couple of weeks racing in the harbor, so they'll be back in 2027. It's much of the same, as you said earlier. He talked about the affordability and Halifax water, and getting the city ready for defense investments. The federal government announced in March about $3 billion in spending on defense across Atlantic Canada, including in CFB, Stadacona, Shearwater, and whatnot, elsewhere in Greenwood as well. So Fillmore wants the city to be ready for that.
Right. Yeah, so he started his talk with positives, and he mentioned about all of this federal money that's going to be coming here, and the infrastructure, and that the amazing opportunities. But then as he went through and talked about his 4 pillars, he called out, he didn't call them targets, but he certainly called out Halifax water, Colin. He called out public transportation being on time. He also called out potholes, which I found kind of interesting, because I think as a mayor, that's probably one of the things that you that you're in charge of. But
Yeah.
anyway, what were some of your takeaways, Colin?
I think he's a good chunk of the speech was about here's all the things that we are struggling to keep up with. Here's the challenges. And I think he was framing it as a way, I'm going to be honest with you all. Yes, we know that there are major headaches here. We know that the buses aren't arriving on time. We know that the growth that we're all feeling, we're all feeling it in a way that is putting pressure on everybody. It takes longer to get to work, to get home. It takes, the services are not keeping up with the growth in the city. So he laid that out. He said, these are things that we need to deal with. And he was saying it in a way, framing it to be like the system that the city is operating under can no longer hold up the weight of it.
Doesn't fit the moment. Yeah,
Right.
he mentioned there's a mismatch between the system and the moment, and he used an anecdote, which I remember when I had my first kid. His anecdote was they had their baby, they walked to the hospital here in town. When they were ready to leave, they didn't have a car, but they were told, you have to have a car seat.
Yes.
And his answer was, well, we're not driving. And that's an interesting way to frame it. So mismatch between the system and the moment. Did we get into specifics here?
I'll go real quick.
Yeah.
We heard a lot of the anecdotes and examples as to what the issues are. I didn't hear personally too many suggestions other than modernization and broad terms around making things more efficient, moving approvals through faster.
And maybe this wasn't the setting to go into the weeds with specifics?
Perhaps not, but I mean, having some concrete, tangible things that people can kind of cling to. Like he did say to me, he said, I want people to walk out with a pep in their step, say, yeah, there's some challenges, but we can do this, and to roll up their sleeves. But I'm also wondering if there's a suggestion of how we can get to that point.
Right.
That I think maybe we could use more of.
Yeah, not a lot of specifics I felt. Suzanne? Yeah.
I'm always interested in these things, and I sort of look around at who's there, and really the crowd were folks who were going to support the mayor, at least in this kind of event.
Do you need an invitation to go to this, or was this
pay.
open to anybody?
Tickets,
you pay,
I believe,
okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, if you're a
usually
member
ticket-based.
of the Halifax Chamber of Commerce, and then you can also pay to get a seat or a table or whatever.
So this would make sense. If you're going to pay for it, you're probably a supporter.
Right.
Yeah.
The people I think about, though, at these events are the people working the events. For example, the servers, the banquet servers who are serving the meals. And I'm thinking these are the people who are most affected by a lot of the changes in our city, including affordability of housing, congestion, getting around. They take longer on the bus. They may not have access to a vehicle or an e-bike. So I didn't hear any suggestions on what life could mean for them. Like, what are the solutions for those folks in the city?
But he, to his credit, he did say, to the young person who needs to take an Uber to get to work, I see you.
Yeah.
And so
you shouldn't have to do that.
Shouldn't have to do that. So he's at least acknowledging the pain points there. And just about the audience real quick as well, there was a lot of representation from the provincial government. You had several ministers, cabinet ministers.
John Lohr was there.
John Lohr was there. Yeah. The health minister, Michelle Thompson, was there. And several members of the Houston government and most of the councilors were there as well.
And first Becky Kent maybe was missing. But
and several senior staff as well. So it was actually, although somewhat ironically, although it was a chamber event, it was really a very political event.
Yes, very.
Yes.
Yeah.
And at one point, I don't know, help me out with this. Did the mayor call out the provincial government? Because at one point he said, we're here, but I forget the wording of it, but it was could be viewed as a pointed comment. Do you recall that piece?
I do real quick. He did say at one point, Premier, we're ready to work with you.
We're ready if you are, or something like that.
Essentially, yeah. I also don't know the exact wording, but he did call him out specifically. So I think that is sort of an invitation to let's get this hard work done together. And I think there's probably an appetite on both sides to do something there.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
And the Premier will be giving his own State of the Province address on Monday, I think it is.
Next
the
week?
25th?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah.
Yes.
I need to look through my emails. I don't know if it's State of the Province or if it's simply about energy development.
I heard it's State of the Province next week.
Oh, okay. Well, then there you have it.
Yeah, and it's interesting this connection, because there were times in this last year where one could surmise, it was never stated by the mayor, that the mayor was seemingly allying himself at the provincial level, whether it was, sure, I didn't ask for strong mayor powers, but I'll take them. And when the province came in on the bike lanes, there were times where you could say, wow, is there a connection? And now I've heard some folks in the know saying, well, the mayor's comments are a prelude to what we're going to hear next week at the provincial level in some ways.
I did ask him about the bike lane piece, and it was almost a year ago that we had his bike lane motion go to council, and there was the rally beforehand and whatnot. And he insisted that he wants the AAA network, bike lane network, completed. He just is more concerned about the cost and not doing it at looking at less expensive alternatives.
And you hear that from a lot of voices from across the political spectrum about the cost of it.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
He did mention to me that he got a message from David Truman, who was with the Halifax Cycling Coalition.
He was on the podcast at one point, yeah.
Saying that, Mr. Truman agreed with him on the cost or looking at less expensive alternatives. I asked David about that. I sent him an email, and he did respond saying, it's a little more complicated than that. So
a little more nuanced.
We'll be speaking with Mr. Truman at some point about
Right. And as I was going over the mayor's comments about housing and mobility, it seems that in specific cases, the municipality is in the backseat to what the province wants to do. There was just an article in AllNovaScotia today by one of your colleagues, Brian, talking about how 5 years in, the Tories have a plan for transportation. Right? I mean, the province came in and took tolls off the bridge. That surely affected how many people are coming in the city. We're widening highways. The province is also talking about light rail, but in these cases, is there much that the mayor and the city council can do?
So brace for this. I know this is going to sound crazy, but they're going to study the roads.
Yeah.
Phew, finally.
I know. Another study.
So
Right.
I am being a little flippant there, but it's because people have probably heard that before,
Yes.
right? So the province is currently studying the Peninsula Road network in terms of, but more of a focus on just getting around and getting goods and people in and out of the peninsula, because there's only 5 ways to get in and off of the thing.
Right.
So they're looking at that. They're also working with the city to buy a bunch of property on Roby Street to widen that road, to make for bus lanes and that sort of thing.
That a core to get into town. Yeah.
Right. And then there's also, which we mentioned last time, the HOV lane concept, which the mayor and the province are very aligned on. So there are things that they're very in simpatico with, but some members of council want more emphasis on alternative forms of transportation. They want
rather than cars,
more bike lanes, etc. And obviously, the province is a major partner in the Mill Cove Ferry project.
Right.
So I think there's definitely an alignment there. Maybe not a 100% connection, but we will also have to wait a while to find out what these are going to look like as these studies move through the system. Yeah.
The mayor is, a big proponent of more ferries. He mentioned that, I think it was in the scrum or in my interview as well. And then during another scrum with the deputy mayor, Patty Cuttle, she said, she would like to see more buses because they move more people every day. Yeah. About double the amount on one bus as compared to a ferry. Yeah. So I think that's where some of the struggle will come into, where the money goes.
Real quick on Patty, sorry, Chris.
And Patty Cuttle gave, it wasn't a response to the, or was it? What was the nature of her comments after the mayor's?
Right, so after the mayor gave his speech...
Patty Cuttle, deputy mayor.
Deputy mayor, yes, Patty Cuttle came up actually after an invite from the mayor's office to participate in this event. They sort of did a Q&A with the chamber president, Bureau, and asked them both sort of a series of questions, and you got kind of to see a bit of the dynamic that's at play there, where the mayor said this, and she said, that's great, but, and threw in some of her own points that sort of reflects the nature of how council works. So,
can you mention were a couple of spaces where she pointed out maybe differences, or?
Sure, I'll go quick here. The mayor was talking about Halifax water and that causing a bit of a bottleneck for development, all the approvals that developers have to go through. and criticizing that organization, which is municipally owned and all that stuff. And Patty, who is also
she's on the water board.
She's on the water board. So, but she did say that it's a really well-run organization with lots of great people who work there, and is very transparent because it's regulated. I will just say you can't pay your water bill right now. There are multiple boil water advisories, and you still don't have fluoride going into the Dartmouth reservoir. So
it's not a good look for the
issues.
water company
there are
at the moment.
issues. I think
There certainly are. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Suzanne, there have been a couple of different articles in both of your publications in different facets of either criticisms or stories about how the way that the water company is working is either restricting growth, whether it was, I think, Colin, you wrote a piece on something going on in Burnside. Today there's an article about how the Mr. Houston is opening up talks about, could we bring a CFL team here? There'd be a stadium out by the airport, and the water company needs to expand their coverage. But so it seems that is this sort of what's going on with the water company? They're stuck between a rock and a hard place because they, by law, have to balance the books, but they're constantly asked to expand outside of their network, which their network is already growing and growing and growing.
Right. And wasn't it back in March, I think, the province gave itself the rule that it could just tell Halifax Water to expand its boundaries, and I think that was connected with the housing piece as well. So it could be connected with Sandy Lake, which is a special planning area in Hammonds Plains, Bedford area. So
it could also be connected to Middle Sackville, Marsden Drive, where there's a rumored Costco proposal that's being under consideration. Our reporting on a potential CFL stadium and the Aerotech Business Park, Houston did weigh in on that yesterday, saying that we would consider, although it's not what the bill was intended for, I believe it's Bill 212, it was more for housing, unlocking housing potential. But he said, yeah, I wouldn't rule it out, basically. So, and he said, that's to help unlock capital for the province, because obviously bringing in a major privately funded stadium like that would be a large infusion of cash and interest in tourism and all those things that come with it. So, yeah, my question is, will the province or federal government or other partners help the utility and the city pay for these things? Because it will be up to the city and the province to ultimately say, yeah, you need to expand your service boundary. So,
and they'll be directed if that's the case.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of affordability, this is something that, I mean, certainly the mayor nailed what everybody's talking about in terms of housing and mobility and affordability and infrastructure. It's what we're all living through with this growing city. Were there specifics coming from the mayor, Suzanne, in terms of his main plank of affordability? I know we talked about this last week. He kind of a shot across the bow before the budget season. He talked about, here's what we're going to do.
Right. The piece that stuck out to me was there was a survey question that was included in the meeting, and it was about housing in particular and what kind of housing the city needs. And I think 39% of the people who responded to that survey said affordable and supportive housing.
Supportive.
That come with resources for people who may need those.
Okay. Yes.
And then the mayor said, we need to build more single-family housing as well as the missing middle housing, so townhouses and duplexes and whatnot.
Yeah, he mentioned that in his talk, which is interesting because it seems the small section that I've been, cross-section I've been here a couple of years, a lot of the buildings that are more of the affordable housing, like the older houses on Roby, are being torn down, fitting into the accelerator fund that came from the federal government, so that larger buildings can go up, which it seems those apartment buildings are not affordable. So the mayor talked about affordability in building houses, but did we hear anything about how that's going to happen?
Not really.
Again, I think it's modernizing the system, making approvals go through faster, getting those connections. He really is trying to put an emphasis on not just permits going out, but occupancy permits going out.
Right.
So getting people actually living in these spaces. There is a real emphasis over the last few years about building giant multi-unit buildings, and those are still underway. And
We still
are
see them all over the
literally in
city.
skyline, yes.
Yeah.
And the mayor, which I thought was perhaps a slight shift in tone here, is not just wanting more units, but he wants more single-family and townhouse style buildings. So, because I think there is a real, although people see all these apartments aren't for everybody. Some
Right,
people want
right.
to have a yard and a place to raise their family, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we're also seeing the number of permits for multi-units also trend down slightly. So there's also a shift in the market there where people, and maybe there's an opportunity for the single houses to increase, but with that, you need to expand the Halifax water boundary, service boundary. You need to sprawl more into places that currently don't have water, like Margesson Drive in Middle Sackville or Sandy Lake or other areas, and you're going to have opposition to those. People are going to say, we don't want this. It's too many people. The traffic's going to get worse. You're going to ruin our lake. So there's going to be some backlash to expanding it.
Right, yeah, you talk about the environmental concerns ruining the lake. There have been some comments, responses to the mayor's talk saying, well, okay, he wants to cut red tape. He's talking about making it more efficient, as you said, but is that going to mean cutting corners on building regulations? Is that going to mean cutting corners on environmental regulations? So is this the case with the mayor and a difficult place for a politician to be, balancing this, okay, we have to grow, we have to meet the moment, but then also are we keeping the quality of life here, and are we undercutting what makes this place a good place to live? Is this, because you mentioned a change of tone. Is there a change here, or is it?
I think some of those environmental concerns do come from the province's rejection of the regional plan, because that included some
The setbacks
around coastal areas and inland lakes, whatnot. And a number of councillors have expressed concerns about that. Tony Mancini, for one, said, we don't want developers in Dartmouth who can't build further back from the city of lakes, lakes in Dartmouth.
Right.
So that's interesting how it'll play out. Yeah.
And the mention for housing, there was one in looking through the transcript of the speech. There was one specific that jumped out at me. The mayor mentioned that we need 68,000 new home units built,
By
which is
2032, I think it was.
which
Yes.
is quite a large number.
Yes.
Some of the information that I've seen is that roughly we between 4,000 and 5,000 housing units get built in the HRM, and so, boy, how are we going to get to that number? And one thing that wasn't mentioned is the bottleneck might not be red tape, but it's skilled labor to build these houses.
Yeah. Councillor Catherine Morris mentioned Fillmore's State of the Municipality address in her recent newsletter, and I'm just going to read a piece because she mentioned that
okay.
68,000 target number. She said it was the first time she's heard that figure was in Fillmore's speech. And she said, as you said, typically in HRM we build 4,000 to 5,000 housing units a year. So building twice as many would be quite a jump for construction industry, already challenged by labor shortages. The mayor suggested the municipality needs to remove planning and regulatory barriers to speed up construction, but he did not give specifics. She writes, my concern is the mayor may be making a case for watering down of regulations, possibly HRM planning and Halifax water regulations. Regulations are in place to protect the public, for example, strong drinking water regulations. Perhaps all of this will be revealed next week when the Premier gives his annual State of the Province speech. So we'll see on Monday.
Yeah, that's
Colin?
We'll keep an eye on that for sure.
Yeah.
One other point that just when you mentioned the tonal shift that I really picked up on was there's been such an emphasis on just growth, just build fast. But for the first time publicly, we've heard him say, but I also want to make sure the people who are currently living here, we improve their quality of life.
And that is an important shift,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it is. Because before it was largely emphasizing grow faster, grow bigger, more services. But this was the first time I've sort of heard it reflected the people who are here now need to be given their moment in the
We
sun.
can't
too.
sacrifice them for 5 years for the future, right?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting times we live in, isn't it? Because we're getting this message from the federal government. We've got to go, we have to build. We're getting that at the provincial level.
Right.
And so certainly that filters down to the municipal level.
Yeah.
This perceived change of tone, and not to insinuate that the mayor didn't care about the people living here now before, but certainly he mentioned it in the speech. Does this speech set the table? How does this set the table for how the mayor, as one of 17 council members, how does this set the table for how they'll work together? Because last year we could certainly say it was a rocky year in that sense. Oftentimes they weren't together. Does this set us up for smoother sailing, or the same sort of situation? What do you think, Suzanne?
I'm not sure. My feeling is that the councillors do want to work with the mayor closely.
We hear that
and
from
they
everyone,
Want
yes.
to get, work together well. Maybe he's, settling more into his role and, figuring things out. He did tell me he plans on running again in 2028.
I saw that.
So we have another couple of years to see what happens during his tenure this time. It is a challenging time to be a leader, I think, in any level of government. People are experiencing the growing pains that are happening across the city, across the municipality, not just in Halifax, the urban core, but in the suburbs and across the rural areas as well. So it's a tough time to be a leader, I think.
Yeah, and I would just add too that when I've spoken to him, he has said that he is very much so aligned with Mark Carney, the recent
Yes.
Prime Minister. He did say
From
to me,
his political party?
yes,
Yeah.
well, former,
Or the
yes,
former political party,
former
yes,
MP,
yes.
right? I don't know if he turned in his party card or not, but he did say to me that he and Trudeau often did, and I wouldn't say butt heads, but didn't always see eye to eye on priorities and things like that.
Right.
So, but I think he's much more aligned with Carney's vision for the country and wants to be on board with, especially when it comes to defense spending. I mean, he sees that as really the next wave of growth and prosperity for Halifax.
In a city with a history of military growth and military centeredness.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Carney, the political whisperer, practically across the board, he has people singing his praises. And the opposite with Trudeau the younger. I think there was a couple of articles just recently where Mr. Houston has said, well, some of the problems I'm having now is because of Mr. Trudeau.
Yeah.
Right. And so certainly that shift in the federal level cycles down even to, where we are in municipal politics, where we don't have Tories and Liberals and NDP coming in and slugging it out, at least not on the surface.
Right, and the last provincial election here in Nova Scotia was very much so. Houston was running against Trudeau. He wasn't running against the other opposition parties in Nova Scotia. It was an anti-Trudeau election,
Yes.
and that resonated with people in Nova Scotia.
It ran the table
Who
for the
were-
Conservatives.
Yeah, the largest majority in the province's history. So that did resonate with folks, obviously. But now Carney, as the new Prime Minister / new Liberal leader, has completely changed, and his shift more to the right side of politics, and putting scare quotes out there for those who are listening, it shows that maybe he's able to work with some these different parties across the different levels of government better. I don't know.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So Suzanne, you mentioned tough time to be a leader. Colin, why don't you start with this one? How, and we touched on a little bit in our last meeting about the strong mayor powers. So the mayor here in Halifax is one of 17 council members. The mayor doesn't have superpowers to come in and really push their weight around. In light of that, and in light of this situation, and last year the settling in and the seeming struggle between council and the mayor, how can a mayor, and this is not a criticism, we're not talking about Mr. Fillmore specifically, but how can a mayor be effective in this setting as one of 17, and specifically where we are now, where the city is changing, it's growing, that's good news, but oh wow, I can't afford to do this, I'm in the car all the time, I can't get a house.
Yeah, it is a really tough question, and I think someone far smarter than
That's
I
why
would,
you
would have to figure that
No,
out.
that's why you two are here.
But I think the tension there is largely thanks to how HRM is structured. It is a giant municipality the size of PEI, made up of districts that encompass rural, suburban,
What's the
urban.
line? Ecum secum to.
Yeah, to somewhere on the west.
Hubbards, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. That's
no
it.
offense,
Yeah,
Nancy
Hubbers.
Hartley.
Yeah, Hubbers. Ecum secum. Right. So you have this large HRM where now people. How long? The HRM is what? 25, 50 years old. I forget.
30 this year.
So
yeah,
30 years old,
yeah.
and you hear questions about, wow, maybe it wasn't such a good idea, but here we are, right? And we have HRM. The fact that constitutionally any province is a creature. Any municipality is a creature of the province anyway.
Right.
So
Yeah. So I think the key there is to find consensus amongst so many different priorities because they're going to be coming from all these different
16
angles.
districts, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's not an easy job, I wouldn't say.
Right.
So we will wait and see how that goes.
Right. Now, Suzanne, you have interviewed. You're in the process of interviewing. I think the goal is every mayor in this fair province. So you could certainly at least weigh in on this.
Yes.
As you talk to the mayors, are you finding outside of the HRM, are you finding similar challenges that they're facing to
I
Mr.
am.
Fillmore, or
Yes.
totally different because we're the big behemoth here?
Yes, my goal is to interview. There are 49 mayors and wardens. I'm interviewing them.
How
as
far
well.
are you through it, roughly?
Not even halfway through, and I
Okay.
have to get cracking because we're almost at June. So I
Okay.
have another profile coming out today, I think,
Okay.
another one next week. I have a few interviews booked for next Thursday,
Yeah.
so I'll be traveling around.
We'll look for those. So the challenges Mr. Fillmore is facing. Are you seeing similarities here when you talk to other mayors?
Absolutely. The biggest challenge is that municipalities have more responsibilities now than they did years ago.
And why is that? Just because
just
there's more
things
people,
are being downloaded
more systems
onto municipalities.
from the
From the province,
provincial level.
like the Coastal Protection Act is the biggest piece recently. Of course,
okay.
that act did not pass, despite having all party support in 2019. It was ditched in 2024.
So
February.
more issues are being offloaded
Yes.
onto the municipality.
And municipalities, not just Halifax and towns, all have to deal with the social issues that unhoused people.
It's where the
and we have
rubber
to
hits the
deal with-
road in every case.
Right, and infrastructure, aging infrastructure, water pipes, roads, sidewalks, things like that.
Yeah.
And they don't have money. And just like HRM, they can't run deficits. So they all have to deal with property taxes. So there's a lot of struggles across the province. It's not just HRM.
Yeah.
And I did a piece, I was curious on how much do these mayors make? And so I put together a chart, and I found out, because it's all public information, Andy Fillmore earns about $217,000 a year. The lowest paid mayor in Nova Scotia makes $14,000 a year.
Must be a part-time.
And it is a part-time job. That's the mayor of Oxford, the wild blueberry capital.
Okay, yeah.
But still, and he, I already met with him, and he said that, yes, it is a part-time job, and the average is probably $40,000-$50,000 a year. It's really more of a full-time job now,
Right.
because especially because of social media, and they're always online, always on their phones, always traveling their municipalities.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. I do think there needs to be some municipal reform. What that looks like, who knows? But we'll see.
One quick point about the lack of funding that municipalities have. One thing that I thought was really interesting that Patty Cuddle mentioned after the Q&A at the State of the Municipality address was some cities are advocating to get 1% of provincial
Yes.
sales tax because they end up having, I think it's like 70 or 80% of the burden of all infrastructure
Right.
falls to the municipality.
But they don't get
And
any
they-
of it.
And they only have property tax and a few other like bus fares and things like that.
Particularly
to collect revenue.
us here, we're so dependent upon property
I think it's
taxes.
85%.
80% or
More
higher
than any
yeah.
other city.
Yeah.
And so that proposal would be from the current 14%, 1% of that would be cleaved off and given to the municipality?
I think she meant 1% point of the provincial sales
Oh, I
tax
see.
would go to municipalities, which would be, I guess, allocated for just for infrastructure, set aside for infrastructure funding, which is an interesting idea. I doubt anyone at the provincial level would be interested in hearing about that, but we'll see. What
Yeah,
happens.
right. Okay, well, the next time we'll get together, we'll have the provincial State of the Union already behind us, and we'll see how that ties in. One last piece I want us to talk about, because you both have mentioned it in pieces, and it's out there. It's about the original the public library here, the Memorial Library, built in 1949. This is, I think, are there others? This is the World War II memorial in the city, basically. Right? I mean, that's what people have told me, that it was built in commemoration of that. It closed down whenever the new library came up. We've talked about it a little bit. The former council voted, okay, we're going to go down the path to tear it down, but it seems like that's changing now, and I think the Memorial Library really personifies, and in a way represents this conflict that's going on in the city with, we need to grow, we need to meet the moment, but how do we do that and still retain what's unique about the city? And certainly the war memorial, the memorial building with the statue of Churchill in front of it. The two of you have talked about that. Colin, what were some of your takeaways?
Sure. Yeah. The building is famously the first public building built after World War II was finished.
Right.
It is a memorial for veterans of World War I, II, and the Korean War, and there's a community of folks out there who are really passionate about maintaining that building.
Right. And also, I failed to mention, it's on a former burial ground.
Yes, the poorhouse
also
burial ground.
Poorhouse. There were, I understand, soldiers with typhoid, and the soldiers that died of things were buried there. There's also an indigenous component. So there's a lot of layers, aren't there?
There are so many. And that's what makes it such a constrained, I think is how staff put it, space to work with. Because you're dealing with a heritage, it does have heritage status, that building. There is the interred who are there on that property. It is a sacred space for the Mi'kmaq.
It represents a lot of history of the city.
It does, and people want to keep it. Staff were originally recommending to essentially demolish it as carefully as possible, so as to not disturb those who were buried there. So it is a complete rock and hard place situation. You have a lot of interested groups who want to turn that building into something, whether it's an archive or a community space or something. The city does need spaces too for people to get together and interact. Public spaces, right? Like Atlantic News.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's also the fact that the building is in kind of rough shape. The engineer's report did describe it as poor. It is in, and I think would need 15 to 20 million just to get it up to leasable or commercially viable.
And I think those figures were figures from a couple of years ago. So we're talking about a lot of money here.
Yeah, and that was pre any archaeological. Which would only increase.
And they're going to find there will be interesting findings there.
Right.
Oh, yes, sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I watched the community planning and economic development meeting yesterday, where a couple of groups did presentations on possible ideas for the building.
William Breckenridge, did he give a talk there? I know he's been a big proponent of
yes. And a couple of people said, put an tourist information center there. The Genealogical Association of Nova Scotia, they want space for a mapping center and whatnot. The issue is the money. These people said they could raise some of the money. But the building has been vacant for, since 2012, and it hasn't been heated. And they made the comparison saying that there's a group, that want to save the Centennial Pool. But that building is still in use. People do still swim in that pool, so I don't think that's a totally fair comparison. But again, tearing it down, it is a lot of history. So, like Colin said, it's a rock and hard place, and what's underneath the building itself is
even a harder place.
Right.
But it seems to me, as someone who's learning about the layers, what the two of you reported on, it sounds like good news, because now instead of a train that we're following a track that we're going to tear this down, opening it up, Mr. Breckenridge said, let's make this a public debate, not a private debate. Right. Let's see if it sounds like some groups are saying that we have some private interest that will come in and help fund this. So it seems that the discussion is in a good place.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'll go real quick here, Suzanne. the main thing that changed during that meeting was, instead of going right to public consultation where everyone can just sort of say, well, it should be this or that or whatever, they're instead going to groups who do have an interest in the building to get their proposals, and then they will bring sort of the best case scenarios out of those and bring those to the public. So it'll be more realistic in terms of, here's what is actually viable with this building,
Right.
given all the layers we talked about, and what you can and cannot do on that land, and there's all these complicated. So any proposal that the city will get will sort of be filtered through that. And so I think that's probably, I think Jean Saint-Amand, one of the councillors, said that's probably the most efficient track to go, because rather than throwing all the spaghetti on the wall, you're going to get actually some concrete ideas that,
Right.
that
Thoughtful ideas from people who know
Nice.
about historic
and who are
buildings.
very passionate about
Yes.
that place.
Right.
Just to William has been very critical of how the city has handled that building, because it has been private
Right.
for so long, and he did a Freedom of Information request and got all these documents, and we've reported on that stuff. So yeah.
So then it seems that we can end this particular episode on a positive note. That discussion seems to be, who knows, but
I
heading
hate-
in the right direction.
I hate to be critical, but so, but I am. But anyway,
That's part of your job. So that's
I
okay.
guess so. But
Yeah.
it's going to take years
Yes.
until we
Yeah.
see anything come out of that. So they have to go all to these potential partners, potentially the Canadian Armed Forces,
Right.
talk to folks in the Indigenous community. Like, it will take a long time, and then public consultation from that
Will
to
happen.
see what the public wants to do, and then a report to
Right.
council. I wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't take like 3 years.
Yes.
But at least it's not going to be torn down, at least at the moment.
Well, we don't
not
know.
yet.
There's still. When I shared my story this morning, I got some comments from people saying, "Just tear it down." It's been vacant for a long time.
We've
It's in
talked
poor
about this
condition.
forever. Yeah.
The city needs a nice park where you have a memorial to
Sure.
the people who are buried there. So
Yes.
there's still those people in the public who think we could do something different.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the planning on the parkland itself will continue in tandem. So
Yes.
there will be some refreshed green space there eventually as well. We'll just
see.
see what that looks like.
Okay, stay tuned. So you can find this discussion on the YouTube site, Atlantic News Pod. It's also on where you get your podcast, whether it's Apple or Spotify. And how about for the two of you, where can people find what you're doing? Suzanne?
You can find the Examiner at halifaxexaminer.ca. You can always email me, Suzanne, at halifaxexaminer.ca. Halifax, yes, with any tips or story ideas or comments about this podcast or my stories.
Great.
Cool.
Cool.
And we're at allnovascotia.com. You can reach me, Colin, Colin, at allnovascotia.com for anything you want to share my way. Be happy to check it out. So yeah.
Yeah, I can attest to the fact that as a new person here, I contacted the two of these individuals, and they didn't say, "Who the heck are you?" They actually took my calls, and we had a discussion, so I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, two sources of independent journalism here in the city, and there are less and less of them. And it is so important. We're getting the feedback we're getting for just starting this is that there aren't many places people can go and find out what's going on in the city. So I want to thank the two of you. And it's sunny outside, so enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Chris.
Chris.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
See ya.